Salutations, everybody, and welcome to Chapter 33 of the one they call Broccoli by Texiliaz. As always, the link to the fic will be in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's jump on into it. Chapter 33, Gifts from Grandpa. Chapter Summary. Grandpa Torino visits the Broccoli household, and he brings gifts. What kind of gifts? Well, read to find out. Author's notes. Hello, everyone. Hope you all are doing okay. Life and mental health struggles really has been a bitch lately, but writing about our cute little green boy certainly helps. Hope you will enjoy the madness that this chapter. It was a lot of fun to write. And shout out to our amazing Mercy Sensei for beta reading this chapter. Trigger warning. Weird situation where there's a fine line between what could be considered treating a pet nicely and downright child abuse. No actual abuse going on, but it is a bit strange, and Ezekiel has a bit of a crisis. Shota's point of view. Gran Torino sensei? What are you doing here? Toshinori asked, while gaping at his old mentor in shock. The retired hero grinned smugly and shuffled his way past the still shocked blonde and into their apartment, all while balancing a giant package in his hands. Surprise! Heard you all were moving tomorrow and thought it was time I gave you two knuckleheads a visit, Torino said, in a tone that was way too cheerful for Shota's liking. It's past 9 p.m. on a Sunday, Shota deadpanned, doing his best not to show too much distaste towards what was essentially his father-in-law. He had trouble dealing with the old pro on the best of days, and he really didn't appreciate the old fart showing up unannounced this late at night, especially when they had such a fully packed day tomorrow. To Shota's annoyance, Torino just waved a nonchalant hand as he settled the package on the floor. It was almost as big as the old man himself. Well, when you get as old as me, time stops mattering as much. Now, will you stop standing there and close the damn door? It's freezing. Yes, of course, Toshinori stammered, as he was quick to close the door before nervously shuffling to stand next to Shota, who moved protectively in front of his husband. Shota was just about to speak when something green ran past them, and the next thing they knew, Broccoli was right in front of Torino. A spark of fear shot through Shota at the idea of his cat attacking the older man. Who knew how the old fart would react if Broccoli decided to bite or scratch him? Broccoli, wait, he called out in warning, only for his words to die on his tongue when Torino kneeled down to pet Broccoli? And the damn cat just let him? Ah, and what do we have here? Is this the quirked cat I've heard so much about, but definitely have never met before? Torino chuckled, as if he'd just told a funny joke. How are you doing, Squirt? These two treating you all right? Broccoli purred. Loudly. He was purring like an engine as he headbutted Torino's outstretched hand and what was obvious affection. What the fuck? Shota breathed out in disbelief. First Nezu, and now Torino? Seriously, what is wrong with their cat's taste in people? Also, why are they acting so friendly towards each other? Have they met before? Shota supposed that wasn't completely impossible, considering Nezu and Torino were old friends, and Broccoli had spent a lot of time away from home lately and was known to visit Nezu. But still, why would anyone like Gran Torino? What's with the shocked looks? Animals like me, Torino huffed when he noticed the other two staring. No offense, Torino-sensei, but not even Slushy likes you, Toshinori said sheepishly. And Slushy likes everyone, Shota added in a deadpan voice. Torino rolled his eyes at that, but didn't look offended, and he was still petting Broccoli. Alright, well then, quirked animals like me, Torino answered with a grin, before he stood up and stretched, causing his back to pop loudly. Now, do you want your presents, or will you keep being rude? Presents? Shota asked warily. Yeah! Or, well, it's not exactly a present for you two, but for your kid, Torino answered, his grin turning downright devious. At that, Shota and Toshinori shared a confused look. But we don't have any children, Toshinori answered carefully with a small frown. Once again, Gran Torino rolled his eyes. Midoriya, you knucklehead. You know, green, curly hair in the exact same shade as this guy's fur, he said, gesturing to Broccoli, who suddenly hissed and swiped a clawed paw against Tarina's leg, who simply ignored him as he continued. Lots of freckles, extremely short and haunted by ghosts. Ring any bells? Oh! Oh! But Midoriya isn't ours. Toshinori tried to argue, a blush on his face as he waved his hands in front of him. Whatever. Torino cut him off with another wave of his hand, which was just rude and made sure to grit his teeth in annoyance. Anyway, the old bastard continued, I'm here to give my grandson a gift, but I ain't got his address, so I thought I might as well give it to you two so you can pass it on to him for me. Shota's eye twitched at the use of the word grandson, but he kept his mouth shut. He had a feeling that arguing with the man on this matter wouldn't end well. Instead, Shota sighed and reluctantly asked, What is this present? Torino's smile brightened as he pulled out a smaller box from the package and proudly held it up for the others to see. A new phone, of course! Damn brat needs a new one since his old one keeps breaking, apparently. Me and Nezu thought it would be a nice gift to our first ever grandson, he said, looking annoyingly smug. The kid was supposed to be given it earlier today, but, well, the kid apparently ran out before Nezu could hand it to him, hence why I'm here. Of course Nezu is in on this, Shota grumbled as he pinched his nose. Even so, Shota swallowed back his annoyance and took the phone. It looked to be a newer model, including a charger and all. The box was sealed and unopened, but Shota would still look through it and make sure Nezu didn't bug it before he gave it to the kid tomorrow. For some reason, Broccoli let out a distressed sound, and Shota was quick to turn his focus away from the phone and instead look back at him. The cat was still next to Torino, looking almost panicked as he tugged on the man's hero uniform with a clawed paw. Shota was just about to tell Broccoli to stop when Torino crouched down again and spoke in a softer voice than Shota had ever heard before. Hey now, it's okay. Me and Nezu don't ever do anything we don't want to, alright? Besides, we have something for our grand cats, too. No need to feel jealous, he chuckled, though there was an odd look in his face, though there was an odd look in his eyes that Shota couldn't quite place. He almost looked fond? Before he could ask what he'd gotten their cats, Torino had already reached for the box and pulled out a cat bed that looked incredibly soft. The fabric was mainly white but decorated with blue flowers. The color scheme made Shota immediately think of Slushy, and he was almost certain that it was meant specifically for her. Not to mention how, out of their two cats, one was the one who seemed to actually use the few cat beds they had on the floor. Broccoli always preferred to either sleep up high, where he could keep an eye on everyone. Not like Slushy, she'd always enjoyed having more of an easily accessible space. That also left her open for pets whenever someone walked by. So, with all that said, it was admittedly a perfect gift for her. Which was why it was ironic that she walked right past the nice new cat bed in order to dive into the now empty box and claim that as her own. Typical. Shetta chuckled with an eye roll before he focused back on the rest of the gifts that Torino had spread out on the floor. There were some random cat toys and treats, things Shota guessed Nezu must have gotten since it seemed to be their cat's favorites. But what stood out to Shota was a small green cat house made out of plush. It was a bright green color, matching Broccoli's fur almost perfectly. The opening was very small and had a soft-looking blanket hanging over it, clearly meant to block out any light or intruders. Torino cleared his throat, gaining the attention of humans and cats alike. So, I get that moving to a new place can be tough, but with this, it's almost like you have a room of your own, right? Even cats need their privacy, especially ones who have a quirk like yours. He chuckled, lightly bumping his hand against Broccoli's side, causing him to sway a little. The cat didn't move. Instead, Broccoli was just openly gawking at his present, his gaze flickering back to Torino every few seconds in disbelief. Great, you broke him, Shota huffed, a small smile tugging on his lips while he watched the small cat. Seriously, though, as much as we appreciate this, you and Nezu really didn't have to. We have plenty of things for the cats already. Come to think of it, they had been thinking about getting some new things for when they moved to UA. Was that why they decided to give them this? It certainly would explain the perfect timing, and it would explain how perfectly some of the things matched what was already on their to buy list. Fuck. Time to check his laptop for annoying bugs again. It's no trouble, Torino answered with a huff. Like I said, we gave you all these things because we want to, and considering Broccoli's unique condition, it only seemed fair to give him something that provided a little more privacy than your regular cat bed. There was a meow, and they all looked down to see that Broccoli had, at some point, entered the house, only to reemerge with his head peeking out behind the curtain. And in his mouth was a small doll of Nezu. Oh god. They had given their cat a plushie of Shota's boss/father figure. Please give him strength. Where did they even get that? Broccoli's eyes were sparkling with clear delight, and he ran over to Torino, still holding the Nezu doll in his mouth, almost as if showing it to him. As soon as the man gave him a smile and a thumbs up, Broccoli ran over to do the same to Toshinori and Shota, looking eager as he sat and proudly showed off his new toy. Nice doll? Very accurate, Shota said awkwardly, cringing at his own words. The likeness is uncanny, Toshinori chuckled as he sat down and ran a hand down Broccoli's back. I'm glad you like it, little one. Make sure to thank Nezu next time you see him. At that, Broccoli gave a very excited nod before he headed back to his new house and gently placed the doll right inside the opening. He then paused for a moment and looked back at the adults anxiously before he shook his head and crawled back into the small house again, thus disappearing from sight. They waited for a moment, wondering if he would reappear, but then they heard a loud purr from inside the house and realized fondly that the cat had settled down to rest inside his new room. I take it he likes this gift? Gran chuckled, looking extremely pleased with himself. Hopefully the kid will like the phone, too. Make sure to give it to him before school starts, alright? My number is already on the phone, so tell him to just give me a call if he needs anything. We will, Shota promised, turning the small phone package in his hands. He'd make sure to give it to Midoriya, after he made sure the rat hadn't bugged it or anything, and after he added a few tracking apps to it himself, just to be safe. Broccoli's point of view. Broccoli hadn't meant to stay in his new little house, but it was just so soft, dark, and comfortable in a way that made it impossible not to relax while being in there. It also felt private in a way he hadn't even known he had craved. It almost felt like he was a kid who had just gotten his very own room. Distantly, he could hear Gran Torino and his dad talking, but he barely paid them any mind as he stayed curled up next to his new Nezu plushie. He only reacted when he heard his dad mentioning food, which made Slushy meow loudly as she ran past his little house and caused the curtain to flutter. A cold breeze flew by, and Broccoli curled further into himself with a whine, wanting to stay where it was warm. You doing all right in there, Squirt? Broccoli blinked against the darkness before realizing it had been Grandpa Torino who spoke to him. With a yawn, Broccoli stretched and did his best to shake off the worst of his sleepiness before he grabbed his new plushie and stumbled out of his house to greet the old man, only to immediately shudder and want to go right back inside. Logically, he knew the hallway wasn't that cold, but compared to the warmth of his little house, it felt freezing. But his grandpa was right here, and Broccoli missed him, damn it. So, with that determination, Broccoli sluggishly walked up to Torino and leaned against his leg, letting out a sleepy purr at the warmth radiating off the man. Damn, you really like that thing, huh? Torino chuckled as he leaned down to scratch Broccoli's head, causing him to purr even louder. He's finally awake? Shoulda huffed from somewhere, sounding amused. That's up to debate, Torino snorted, as he picked up a very limp Broccoli and carried him over to the couch, where he was placed between him and Shota. Broccoli let himself be moved as he laid down and got comfortable, still holding plush Nezu close. He groggily glanced around and noticed that Toshinori was rushing around, placing a tray of different cheeses, ham, and crackers on the table, all while fretting over their placement and whatnot. The cat tilted his head curiously, wondering why his dad seemed so stressed. He glanced up at the other adults and noticed that Shota was watching his husband with a bored expression, while Torino simply looked amused. Toshi, come on. That's enough, Shota sighed, sounding tired. But it needs to be perfect. Hold on, I'm sure I have something else in the kitchen. You don't even eat cheese anymore, Shota groaned, shooting the blonde an annoyed look. Just because Torino mentioned he was a little hungry doesn't mean you have to have some fancy buffet. Hey, don't blame me. I never asked him to make all of this, Torino scoffed as he gestured to the now full table as if it annoyed him, too, though the grin on his face never went away. Seeing how he still didn't understand what was going on, Broccoli turned to look at Nana, who had, at some point, appeared and was floating next to her predecessor while smiling fondly at his antics. As soon as she felt his eyes on her, she looked up and explained with a smile. Back when Toshi worked in America, he started to enjoy cheese and he would bring some back to Japan. Turns out, Torino also really liked cheese, and it turned into a sort of thing where Toshi keeps trying to impress him with different brands, hoping they could bond over it. She sighed with a fond shake of her head. Also, a hungry Gran is a grumpy Gran, Daigoro added with a laugh. That too. God knows Toshinori has fallen victim to Torino's horrible hangry tantrums way too many times. Nana chuckled, as if remembering something fun. Broccoli failed to see the humor in that, but decided that as long as they were happy, he wasn't going to question it. He also wondered if maybe he could get some cheese for Toshinori back when school started again. Who knows? Maybe that could be something they could bond over. Shota was still trying to get Toshinori to sit down and relax, but all their bickering came to a stop when, seemingly out of nowhere, Sushi jumped up on the table and tried to grab one of the pieces of cheese. Shota was quick to react and caught her before she could touch anything, much to Slushy's annoyance. Sorry, Slushy, this isn't good for you, Toshinori said apologetically. Poor cats, Torino sighed dramatically as he ran a hand down Broccoli's back. Here we are, feasting away, and meanwhile they are starving. This is just too cruel, he said dramatically with a shake of his head. Oh, for the love of... It's not cruel. Eating too much would only make them sick. What would be cruel would be feeding them something they can't eat, Shota groaned as he glared at the other. It looked like Torino was about to say something, probably to further piss Shota off, but before he could do that, Toshinori stepped in to calm the situation. Now, none of that! Please! How about we calm down and eat? Sounds good, Shota scoffed, obviously still annoyed but letting it go for Toshinori's sake. Meanwhile, Broccoli just watched the adults, feeling confused. Did his dad and grandpa not like each other? Just as Shota had predicted, Toshinori didn't eat any of the ham or cheese, though he did munch on some of the gluten-free crackers while Shota and Torino ate the rest of the food. None of the adults really said much. It was honestly kind of uncomfortable and awkward, but then Torino finally broke the silence. So, what do they eat anyway? The cats, I mean, the old hero asked. They eat cat food. They eat cat food. You know, food for cats? Shoulda answered grumpily, as if Torino was stupid for even asking that. Toshinori practically jumped at the chance to start a conversation, and to avoid the other two from starting an argument, and then, the next thing they knew, the man was rambling about different brands and how Shota was very knowledgeable and stern in what they should and shouldn't eat, what was a good ratio for every meal, etc. It honestly had Broccoli getting hungry, hearing them speak about food while seeing them eat something that smelled so delicious right in front of him. Then, to his embarrassment, his stomach chose that exact moment to rumble loudly, causing all conversation to quiet down as the three adults turned to look at him. Broccoli immediately curled into himself, feeling embarrassed. He was glad cats couldn't blush, or he was sure his face would be bright red by now. And here you are, claiming you aren't starving the poor kid, Torino huffed, sounding almost upset. He's not a kid. Broccoli is at least 3 years old. I stand by what I said. That's a literal child. 3 as in cat years. I'm gonna go grab some food for the little one, Toshinori said, as he awkwardly fled the couch and into the kitchen. At that moment, Broccoli wished that his dad had taken him with him. It probably took less than a minute for Toshinori to reappear, but with the way Shota and Torino kept bickering with each other, it felt like much longer. Once Toshinori appeared, 2 bowls of cat food in hand, Sashi was quick to throw herself at his feet. She wasted no time in scarfing down her food, before quickly moving on to Broccoli's bowl, at which point Shota sighed and moved to pick her up so Broccoli would have a chance to eat. But Broccoli just couldn't. He stayed on the couch, glancing between the three humans and the bowl on the floor. He'd eaten that same food from that same bowl on this very floor hundreds of times. It was just that Gran Torino was here this time. And this was a man who knew he was actually a human, who Izuku had shared meals with at a kitchen table, eating, talking, and just being normal. And even though he already knew none of what he was doing while being in his cat form was normal, it just suddenly hit Broccoli how weird it must be for the retired hero to see him like this. Acting like a cat was one thing, but there was no way he could just eat cat food on the floor while Torino was here. Sure, the man had been accepting so far, but what if this was too much? Would Torino be disgusted with him? Would he call him out in front of his dads? Why did the thought of simply acting like a cat in front of this man suddenly make Broccoli want to throw up? You sure he likes that stuff? Torino huffed as he crossed his arms and frowned down at the bowl as if it had personally offended him. It surely doesn't look like it. Maybe some Katsudan would work better. I bet it's his favorite. Cats don't eat Katsudan, you idiot, Shoda muttered before he picked Broccoli up and placed him next to the bowl on the floor. Besides, he usually loves this stuff. I don't know why he isn't eating this time. Maybe because it's out of a bowl on the floor? Torino suggested, causing Broccoli to look up at him in surprise. He hadn't expected to see understanding in the old man's eyes as he continued. I mean, isn't he supposed to have an intelligence quirk? And I don't know about you two, but I think if someone tried that with Nezu, he'd find a way to execute them on the spot. That's... He's always been fine with it before, Toshinori said, looking deeply hurt and guilty. It's probably because some grumpy old man is staring at him that he doesn't feel like eating, Shoda countered, though he did look a bit sheepish, as if only just now realizing how it might make the quirk cat feel uncomfortable. A small moment passed, with Broccoli and Shoda staring at each other, before Shoda sighed and picked both Broccoli and the bowl up, before placing them both on the couch beside him. Just this once, he mumbled, as he ran a hand down Broccoli's back and gestured for him to eat. And Broccoli, well, maybe it was a bit childish or stupid, but he honestly felt ecstatic over being allowed to eat on the couch. He almost forgot about the eating cat food situation entirely because of it. He was so high up, like a king on his throne. How could he not want to eat his food when he had the best seat in the house? Broccoli hadn't even registered that he'd started eating. He'd only realized that the food was gone when he found himself sniffing the bottom of the bowl for any leftover crumbs. See? He sure heard Shoda huff, sounding incredibly smug. He likes it. Yeah, he sure does, Torino huffed, causing Broccoli to flinch. Broccoli was a bit scared to look at the man, wondering if this would change anything. But once he did meet his eyes, he didn't see any disgust, just fondness, amusement, and was that guilt? Or sadness? He didn't know how to exactly read the old man's expression, but at least he didn't seem mad at him, which was all Broccoli cared about. After that whole ordeal, his dads and Grandpa changed the subject and were talking about stuff that mostly went over Broccoli's head. Now that he'd eaten, he was quickly getting tired again, and he found himself lying down and dozing out. After a while of half listening to the adults talk, Broccoli decided to call it a night and he went back to his new little house. On the way there, he passed by Slushy, who had once again laid down inside the empty box and was completely ignored her own new cat bed. Broccoli huffed in amusement at his sister's antics. He remembered how mad his dads had been while packing, only to find Slushy randomly tucked away inside of the boxes whenever they turned their backs away, even for a second. Sometimes Broccoli had joined her, unable to resist the temptation of all those empty boxes laying around. But he'd mostly stayed up on the cat tree, out of the way in fear of accidentally having something dumped on him. Toshinori and himself had both had a heart attack after he'd nearly had a book land on his head while he napped in a box. It kind of made him want to not stay in the boxes afterwards. Though clearly his sister didn't have the same worry, with how she confidently claimed every box as her own. Shaking his head, Broccoli crawled into his new house and laid down on the insanely soft bedding inside. He felt giddy with childish joy as he hugged his Nezu plushie closer. It was just too cute, and it even smelled like the mammal. Nezu must have scented it or something, which made him feel oddly safe. He hadn't even realized that scents were so important to him until literally today. Sure, he always preferred sleeping in his dad's room or in Shota's scarf, or just about any place that his dad's or his sister had recently been at, but he'd never really thought about why, only knowing it made him feel safe and like he wasn't alone, even if no one else was there with him. Maybe he could bring some of his dad's items, or one of Slushy's blankets or something in here, just to make it feel even more homely. That was a nice idea, and Broccoli found himself falling asleep with a soft purr and a smile. Broccoli woke up by the sound of talking right outside his house. It took a while for his tired mind to catch up, and it wasn't until he heard the front door close that he realized that Gran Torino was leaving. His dads were moving away, going back into the kitchen, and Broccoli quickly checked that the coast was clear before he darted out the cat door and ran after his grandpa, hoping he'd be able to catch him before he was gone. He hadn't even thanked him for the gifts yet. Broccoli sprinted out to the parking lot, frantically looking around for any sight of the old man or his card. Took you long enough, Gran Torino huffed, nearly making Broccoli jump out of his own skin. With a squeak, he quickly turned around and found the retired hero leaning against the side of his car right next to the building. He hadn't even parked in a proper spot. No wonder Broccoli hadn't seen him. I wasn't sure you were going to show up, but I'm glad I decided to stick around, Gran continued as he opened the door to his car and gestured for Broccoli to follow. The cat barely hesitated as he leaped into the passenger seat. After all, there was no way for his dads to see Torino's car from any of their windows. And even if his dads were to go outside, it was too dark to really make out anything. Which is why, after a quick look around and confirming that there was no one around and no cameras pointed this way, Izuku felt brave enough to turn back into a human. What are you doing here? Izuku asked as the old hero sat down in the driver's seat and closed the door. He didn't start the car, though, leaving them both engulfed in darkness. Oh, like you weren't eavesdropping the whole time, Torino huffed with a grin, clearly amused. I already told your dads that I was out of town for a mission. I then heard how Nezu failed to deliver the gifts and thought, hey, I might as well drop by. Izuku felt his eye twitch at the accusation of him eavesdropping, and he was sure that if he had his tail right now, it would twitch in annoyance too. I don't eavesdrop on people, he hissed out, offended that the retired pro would think that. He couldn't help what he heard or saw while being in his own home. Could have fooled me, Gran said with a grin and a shrug. So, did you like your presents? You seem to enjoy Broccoli's gifts a lot. At that, Izuku felt a blush quickly spread on his face, and he averted his gaze in embarrassment. It was nice. Thank you, but I still don't understand why why would you go through so much trouble? It's no trouble, Trina waved him off. You need a working phone, or you will get yourself killed one of these days with how much trouble you seem to get into, the old hero said, matter-of-factly. Izuku felt himself blush and sink into his seat at the reminder of how much of a trouble magnet he was. I guess, he reluctantly agreed, pouting when the man barked out a laugh. And as for Broccoli's gift, Torino chuckled, looking thoughtful for a moment before he continued. Well, you deserve as much privacy as you can get if you are sharing living spaces with those two. Can't have a teenager sleep in the same bed as two grown men, after all. The blush on Izuku's face increased tenfold, and he accidentally choked on his own inhale, causing him to cough wildly. Torino, the bastard, was just laughing at his misery. I don't. That's. Izuku tried to defend himself, only to be laughed at even more, which made him bury his face in his hands with a loud groan. I don't stay in their room while they do things like that. Just. Gross. You're even worse than Diagoro. Inside his mind, an offended, hey! Could be heard from Diagoro, as well as multiple howls of laughter. Gran Torino was still laughing, even going as far as slapping a hand against his knee, which only further annoyed Izuku. Holy shit, kid! I was only kidding! The old man laughed. Izuku shot the man with another half-hearted glare before he suddenly remembered something. Why, why are you so mean to Dad? I mean, Shota, anyway. Do you hate him or something? Izuku asked, partly because he was curious, but mostly because he wanted to change the subject. Thankfully, Torino decided to show him mercy and allowed the subject to change. The man seemed to think for a moment, looking deep in thought before he gave a small shrug. Nah, hate is a strong word. Don't get me wrong. I respect the hell out of the man as a hero, but the guy's got a giant stick up his ass most of the time. Makes him all that more fun to mess with. Still, you could at least try to be a bit nicer to him, Izuku suggested, remembering how annoyed Shota had been and the way Toshinori anxiously tried to make them get along. At that, Torino hummed as if thinking it over, before a sharp grin spread across his face. Tell you what, next time I see him, I'ma try just that, the old man chuckled, looking downright devious. Why did Izuku have the feeling that he had somehow made things worse? He sent out a silent apology to his dads, hoping whatever prank the old man was preparing wouldn't be too bad. They talked for a while before Izuku decided he should probably head back before his dads noticed he was missing and came looking for him. Before he left, though, Torino stopped him with an oddly serious look on his face. You can always come to Nezu and I if you need anything. Our doors are always open. Izuku blinked in surprise. Thank you? Will remember that, he answered, unsure as to what else to say. Torino nodded seriously. Good. Now off you go. You have a big day tomorrow. Right, good night, Izuku squeaked out, before he quickly stepped out of the car and turned back into his cat form. By the time Broccoli came back to his apartment, the lights were out and his dads had already gone to bed. Broccoli glanced briefly at his new house before shaking his head and sneaking into his dad's room. There, he found both of his dads and his sister sleeping soundly. It seemed like Sushi had gotten bored with the box and wanted to be close to their dads, which Broccoli couldn't blame her for. After all, they were going to be away from the apartment for a long time, so he wanted to share their last night here with them. He'd have to wake up early tomorrow so he could slip out and visit his secret storage one last time to gather his shoes and uniform before heading to the dorms and meeting his classmates. But that was all for tomorrow Izuku to worry about. For now, he just needed to sleep. Which wasn't really a problem tonight, because laying like this, next to his dads and his sister, and with the vestiges silently wishing them a good night, Broccoli fell asleep with a smile, feeling utterly content and safe. When Broccoli woke up the next morning, it was to the sound of something heavy and sounding like metal locking in place. But by the time he realized what had happened, it was already too late. While sleeping, he had somehow been put inside a pet carrier. A pet carrier which was now locked and then put inside his dad's car, right next to another carrier containing a meowing slushie. He was stuck in a car that was driving him and his family to UA. And Broccoli was still in his cat form. Oh no. Author's notes. LOL, why do I have the feeling that if Gran were trying to be nice to Shota, it would probably go something like this. Gran, there is my favorite son-in-law. How are you doing, boy? Come give your old man a hug. Shota, holding up a cross and backing away. Who is this demon? Poor Thawa, he'd be traumatized, LMAO. Next up, dorms! I am so hyped for the next chapter, not gonna lie. Letting Broccoli meet 1A and moving into the dorms is one of my favorite parts of the story, and I hope you all are looking forward to it as to all the fluff that is ahead. Thank you everyone for your continued patience, comments, and support. I've been struggling a lot lately, but all your nice comments and love really helps keep me motivated to keep going. Hope you all have a great, wonderful day. And that's a wrap on chapter 33. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know I did. And oh my god, Broccoli being put inside of a pet carrier, it actually makes me mad at Shota and Toshinori because they know he's a quirked cat. Like, you wouldn't put Nezu inside of a pet carrier to take him someplace, even if he was your child. So, yeah, Shota, Toshinori, what the flip? What the fuck, you guys? Anyway, please go show the original author Texiliaz some love, and please leave me a comment. I love reading your comments. They make me so happy. I also like specifically hearing your hate comments. That being said, there are a few people I might need to shout out. So, shout outs to the Black Cheetah, Mr. underscore business, and Starkill Knights 6167. Thank you guys so much for your hate comment. Please don't flame these guys. I do ask for hate comments. If you want to get shout out in the next video, leave a hate comment and I will do it. I hope you guys all enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye, pups.